started. We're going to go into another study with Thanksgiving Rightly Divided. And what we're doing is we're going into Psalm 95, where we're going into a study called Before His Presence with Thanksgiving. And what this is a psalm of rejoicing where Israel goes into their kingdom after they went through the events of the Great Tribulation. And as they go through this, they are praising the Lord with thanksgiving. And so what a great topic, as you are, again, just like we had done with our first study that we had gone through recently. When you're in that Thanksgiving dinner and you're talking all about everything from pilgrims to Indians to Thanksgiving to everything that comes up, and you just need topics, I wish I had a topic I could talk to my friends and my families and my neighbors and everything about the idea of Thanksgiving. Well, we're going to give you a whole verse. We're going to give you a whole psalm today on Thanksgiving, where you can work this in if you can. You can work this in as you like, as you wish, to the idea and the topic of Thanksgiving. Otherwise, this is also something that'll benefit. This is something that's going to help out the idea of Thanksgiving. Psalm 95, we'll just read it. It's going to be verses 1 through. There's only 11 verses in the psalm. And again, it's called Before His Presence with Thanksgiving. So this is going to be something where you'll be able to work with the group you're with, the family you're with, the people you're with. And it's part of our Thanksgiving Rightly Divided playlist that we have. Psalm 95 verse 1 says, "Oh, come, let us sing unto the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before His presence with thanksgiving, and make a joyful noise unto Him with psalms. For the Lord is a great God, and a great King above all gods. In His hand are the deep places of the earth. The strength of the hills is His also. The sea is His, and He made it, and His hands formed the dry land. O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture, and the sheep of His hand. Today, if ye will hear His voice, harden not your heart, as in the provocation, as in the day of temptation, and in the wilderness, when your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my work. 40 years long was I grieved with this generation, and said, It is a people that do err in their heart, and they have not known my ways, unto whom I swear in my wrath that they should not enter into my rest." So we're seeing here how the Lord is being rejoiced as they're singing the little flock of Israel. That's Luke chapter 12, verse 32. This is the audience to whom is reading this. Even King David wrote the Psalms. He's a Jewish king, and yet the audience to whom all of this is pertaining to, as they're going to be able to pick this up and read this and study this and learn this and grow from this and use this for their benefit, is going to be the little flock of Israel as they go through the events of the Great Tribulation. They'll say, "Oh, come, let us sing unto the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation." And so we see this as they go through this. It's whether it be entering into the kingdom or going through the tribulation, even in the face of adversity, they're called to maintain their trust in God, the little flock is, and express their devotion through songs and worship. And we'll see all throughout Scripture, they have the Hebrews have various songs of worship. This serves as a source of strength and encouragement during difficult times. You look at Exodus 15, verse 1. There were always various songs that they were to sing. And Exodus 15, verse 1, shows one of them here. We won't read the whole song, but we'll see various parts of it here. This Pharaoh and his armies get wiped out by the Red Sea being brought back together after it was parted. So then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, and spake, saying, I will sing unto the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and song, and he is become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him an habitation, my father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war, the Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his hosts hath he cast into the sea. His chosen captains also are drowned in the Red Sea. Now remember, this is a song. So people aren't singing, like you hear on the radio today, songs about love and dating and this person did this and songs about all sorts of crazy themes you hear today. They're singing about how the Lord is a man of war. Pharaoh's chariots are dead. People are dead. Hooray for that. This is what the songs are about. This is what they're singing. Pharaoh's dead. His army's dead. Hooray for that. This is the song we're going to go sing. This is Israel's song. So they sing this here in Exodus 15. If you look at Numbers 21, verse 17. Numbers 21, verse 17. You see here it says, Then Israel sang this song, Spring up, O well, sing ye unto it. The princes digged the well, the nobles of the people digged it, by the direction of the lawgiver with their staves. And from the wilderness they went to Mattanah, and from Mattanah to Nahaniel, and from Nahaniel to Bamoth, and from Bamoth in the valley, that is the country of Moab, to the top of Pisgah, which looked toward Jeheshmon. And then it goes on, they're talking about how they're rejoicing with the fact of water, which is what you're seeing there. And I will give them water in verse 16. So they're rejoicing over the fact they're getting water as they go through their journey. So this is another song they're singing, they're rejoicing over the fact they're getting some water as they go through their journey. So the themes of rejoicing and singing are very different from what you hear on the radio today. Just to bring that up as a note. They're rejoicing over water. They're rejoicing over the fact that their enemies are destroyed and dead by what the Lord did. If you look at Deuteronomy 31, verse 19. Deuteronomy 31, verse 19. It says, Now therefore write ye this song for you, and teach it the children of Israel, put it in their mouths, that this song may be a witness for me against the children of Israel. For when I shall have brought them into the land which I swear unto their fathers, that floweth with milk and honey, and they shall have eaten and filled themselves and waxen fat, then will they turn unto other gods and serve them and provoke me and break my covenant. And it will come to pass, when many evils and troubles are befallen them, that this song shall testify against them as a witness. And so it goes forth, and so there's a song, pretty much a song that's going to be sung, saying as a witness against the children of Israel, that as they betray the Lord and go forth and do as they wish, there's going to be a song sung as a witness and a testimony against them. So songs aren't always this cheerful, wonderful, glorious, cheerful thing. There's a song being sung saying, Israel, you betrayed the Lord. Israel, you have done wrong against God. And here's a song that is going to be sung that the Lord had Moses write. And here are the lyrics that say, you guys are horrible. You guys are terrible. And here's a song that we're just going to sing that has to do with this. And so it's very interesting how the songs in the Old Testament, what the themes have to do with. Whenever you see, there's other songs in there, and even the Song of Moses is Deuteronomy 32. You see it as it starts out. Give ear, O ye heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. That's Deuteronomy 32, verse 1. My doctrine shall drop as the rain, and my speech shall distill the dew, and it just goes on and on. Verse 4, he is the rock, the work is perfect. His work is perfect, for all his ways are judgment. A God of truth and without iniquity, just and right is he. It kind of goes on, and the whole chapter, Deuteronomy 32, is a song. And we won't read the whole one, but again, that's another song testifying and talking about how great is the Lord and testifying about his works. So when you come back and you see this in Psalm 95, verse 1, it says, Come, let us sing unto the Lord, let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. All the different types of songs and the themes that were in the songs throughout the word of truth, rightly divided, testifying to the greatness of the Lord, whether he was destroying and wiping out Israel's enemies or testifying on how Israel was going to betray the Lord. The Lord's like, not only do I already know this is going to happen, but I've already written songs about how you're going to betray me in the future, Israel. God's like, I already know what will happen, and I've written songs about it.
Oh, okay.
And there's further songs about
I
how
don't know if
great
that means
God
frozen
will
or
be a
fall.
man of
So
war and
I
destroy
don't know.
Israel's enemies. He's got songs
All
about
right.
that.
Bye.
But nonetheless,
Thanks.
they're singing a song, rejoicing. Israel is singing a song, rejoicing in the glory of God's kingdom and his rule and his reign after the events of the Great Tribulation. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. When they come together in the kingdom, the little flock will rejoice. It'll be a time when God rules the earth and his kingdom reign has come. We've seen this in previous studies. If we go back and look at Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4, Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4, God's kingdom reign, which we've studied in previous studies. We'll go there and check that out. Habakkuk 2, verse 4 goes forth to say, I'm sorry, 2:14, not 2:4. It says, for the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. That's Habakkuk 2:14. For the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. This is why they're making a joyful noise unto the rock of our salvation. Israel is the hour. And that's Habakkuk 2:14. As they go forth and say this is why you see such things, or you see in such things as Jeremiah 31 and Isaiah chapter 54, where the young men and the children will know the Lord through their dreams, where you see this even in Joel chapter 2, uh, through their dreams and visions, where it says young men will dream dreams, old men will have visions. And it's going to be because the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord based on Habakkuk chapter 2. The Lord will have his kingdom reign, and Israel, salvation is in the Lord, and they're rejoicing in that. And so it talks about this in Joel chapter 2, Jeremiah chapter 31, Isaiah chapter 54, Hebrews chapter 8, goes through and mentions all this. If you go to Zechariah chapter 2, verse 5. Zechariah chapter 2, verse 5, as we've studied in previous studies, the reason why Israel can make a joyful noise to the rock of their salvation there and sing songs, as we're seeing here in Psalm 95, as we saw in previous studies from the book of Zechariah, he says, for I, saith the Lord, will be a wall of fire round about her. That's Israel, it's Jerusalem. And there will be the glory in the midst of her. And you see this again through Isaiah chapter 4, Psalm 46, comes through this and mentions this, that the Lord is coming back and he'll gather Israel, he'll heal Israel, he'll restore Israel. Isaiah 11 talks about this, Isaiah 57 talks about this, Jeremiah 30 again, Jeremiah 31 talks about this, Revelation 21, the kingdom, the city comes from heaven to earth, and Revelation 22 talks about all this. But again, to throw out those cross references just for time's sake,
Yeah.
these are all the events that come into play and why Israel is rejoicing with song, because of Israel's salvation being in the Lord and God's kingdom reign is taking place. And so we see in Psalm 95, verse 2 says, let us come before his presence with thanksgiving. There's our key verse there, before his presence with thanksgiving. We're seeing this come into play here where they will literally be in his presence. Where you said two or more are gathered, there I am in the midst of you, that verse in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's because Israel will literally be before the Lord, literally standing before him. Let us come before his presence, and they come before him with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. And so they'll have these psalms of rejoicing that they can come and sing before him. They can literally serenade him with psalms of rejoicing, with singing. And we see that there um, in verse 2. And so singing from the psalms directly is a way for the Hebrews to find solace and encouragement, as well as doctrine for rejoicing in the millennial kingdom. If you look at James chapter 5, verse 13. In James chapter 5, verse 13, this is why you see this here when it talks about how, when he says, make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. The book of James also builds on that, cross-refers with that, and talks about that. In James chapter 5, verse 13 says, is any among you afflicted? Let him pray. Is any merry? Let him sing psalms. So the idea of singing psalms doesn't go away when you get to the ages to come. It confirms only what they've been reading in the Psalms, that they should sing psalms, especially as they come before his presence in the kingdom with thanksgiving. So we see this here in Psalm 95, verse 2, as it kind of goes forth with this, based on what you're seeing in Zechariah 2, Habakkuk chapter 2, and all those other previous cross references. So when we see that there in Psalm 95 about coming before his presence with thanksgiving, when you apply this, or if someone accidentally tries to apply this psalm into their life today, thinking that it might be for the body of Christ, thinking that this is something in the dispensation of grace, you don't want to try to think that this is a mystical presence, or this has something to do with your feelings, or it's religious emotionalism where you say, let us come before his presence. Well, I guess his presence is somewhere around here, and I'm just going to start feeling emotional about his presence. You'll see a lot of Bible studies or a lot of Christian circles. They'll say, well, I feel the presence of the Lord, or we had I forget what they used to do, but they used to do all sorts of different things where they feel the presence of God, or, I felt goosebumps, I felt warm, I felt, they felt. It wasn't about the truth of the word rightly divided according to the doctrine on the pages. It was how they felt. They felt goosebumps. They felt warm. They felt happy. They felt this way. They felt that way. They felt emotional before his presence, which they couldn't even accurately describe. They say, well, you can't know God, so you can't know his presence, and you can't know this, and you can't know that. So again, it gets confusing. It gets strange. But literally, Psalm 95, verse 2 is talking about how Israel, in their kingdom, in their earthly kingdom, the kingdom on earth, they will literally, physically stand before God's literal physical presence with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. And they will literally do this, as you see from those different songs that they're singing all through what we just went through. They'll literally do this. So this is the literal understanding of Psalm 95, verses 1 and 2. When you get into verse 3, he says, for the Lord is a great God and a great king above all gods. Well, he needs to be a great king as he is ruling the earth as the king. They're his servants, he's the king. And so, for the Lord is a great God and a great king above all gods. The Hebrews understand that their God is not only great, but also superior to all other gods, because they've gone through a great tribulation where the Antichrist declares himself to be God. You see that from the book of Daniel. You see that from Matthew chapter 24. They have to flee into the wilderness because he proclaims himself to be God. He's the abomination of desolation. Matthew chapter 24, verse 15. There's also Baal, another false god, Ashtaroth, another false god, and all the other gods they had to face throughout their history. And it says in verse 4, in his hand are the deep places of the earth, the strength of the hills is his also. So it reinforces the belief that God's authority extends over the land and the resources that the meek are going to inherit, which, if we go to Matthew chapter 5, is exactly what the Lord explained to the little flock of Israel. Matthew chapter 5, I believe it's in verse 5. Matthew chapter 5, it's been a while since I've read that, but Matthew chapter 5, verse 5. Yeah, Matthew 5:5. When it says how the meek is going to inherit the earth, this is what they're talking about. It's talking about how in his hand are the deep places of the earth. The strength of the hills is his also. And of course, we know that in Matthew, it talks about how, especially in Matthew 19:29, how Peter everything up. Well, they'll get 100-fold for everything they give up, and the meek will inherit the earth. We see that here in blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. If you look at Matthew chapter 19, verse 29. Oh, yeah, go right here. We'll get a picture of that when it comes to the inheritance. And we just did a parable about it. We did a study on the parable about this. Matthew 19, verse 29. Yeah. 19:29. Let's see if I can find it. Let's go to verse 27. It says, Then answered Peter and said unto him, that's the Lord, Behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have therefore? And Jesus said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me, in the regeneration when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, that's what we're reading now in Psalm 95, ye also shall sit upon the 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone that hath forsaken houses, or brethren, or sister, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive an hundredfold, and shall inherit everlasting life. But many that are first shall be last, and many that are last shall be first. And of course, you can see the parable of the laborers in the vineyard in Matthew chapter 20. You can see that also on our YouTube channel. We spent about an hour going through it. But this parable, the laborers in the vineyard, Matthew chapter 20, talks about how everyone gets a hundredfold, no matter what hour on God's timeline in prophecy. These Hebrews, they show up at certain different times on God's timeline. They all receive a hundredfold for when they show up, and they rejoicefully go into the kingdom. But some say, well, wait a minute, that's not fair that he receives a hundred. So when we get back to Psalm 95, and we're seeing in verse 3, based on Matthew chapter 19, based on Matthew chapter 5, the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods. In his hand are the deep places of the earth. They're not focused on heavenly places. They're not focused on the Apostle Paul. They're not focused on the body of Christ. Psalm 95, they don't know about it yet. It's not revealed until Acts chapter 9. That's where we are. That's the dispensation of grace. The strength of the hills is his also. Going into verse 5, it says, the sea is his, and he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. And of course, we see this in Genesis 1, creation account. It says, and his hands formed the dry land. And also an interesting point, if you look at Job 38, also Job, in Job 38, when the Lord sort of scolds him with those questions, also mentions a bit of creation account there. Job 38, verse 4, and he says to Job, Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. Who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest? Or who hath stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? Or who laid the cornerstone thereof? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Or who shut up the sea with the doors, or with doors, when it brake forth as if it had issued out of the womb? When I made the cloud the garment thereof, and thick darkness a swaddling band for it, and break up for it my decreed place, and set bars and doors, and said, Hitherto shalt thou come, but no further, and here shalt thy proud waves be stayed. So you're seeing here the land being created, the sea being created. God is speaking and stating, and he's saying, Job, where were you when I made all this? But the fact is, he made all this. And you're seeing him talking about what he spoke, essentially, how he spoke it. And he's like, Job, where were you when I was doing this? And in order to humble Job. But as you see this here in verse 5, verse 4 and 5, he's saying the deep places of the earth, the strength of the hills is his also, the sea is his, and he made it, and his hands formed the dry land, which is what the meek will inherit. They'll receive a hundredfold. They'll get all this from Matthew 19, Matthew 5, and that's why they're rejoicing based on Zechariah 2, verse 5, and so forth with all the other cross references. And so it kind of continues on. Verse 6 says, Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord, our Maker. And so they're happy to do this. Israel and the world rejoices over the Lord's reign, over his kingdom reign. You see this if you look at Isaiah chapter 2, verse 3. In Isaiah chapter 2, verse 3, you see a description not only of the kingdom here, and a description of it, but there's also verses that talk about it and describe it. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 3. And it says, And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, up to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears in the pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. O house of Jacob, come ye, and let us walk in the light of the Lord. So Israel is rejoicing, the nations are rejoicing. There's no more war anymore. The sin curse is lifted from the earth. And so we're seeing this come into play here. And you see more cross references with this with Zechariah chapter 8, Psalm 25, Isaiah 51. It says, for out of Zion shall go forth the law. It doesn't go forth out of Zion today. You know that. And the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, well, the word of the Lord doesn't go out of Jerusalem today. It's a fact. And he shall judge the nations. We know this from Psalm 82, Psalm 96, and Psalm 110. The Lord will judge among the nations. And so this comes into play here, that Israel and the world rejoice over the Lord's reign. The Lord is a great God, he says in Psalm 95, verse 3. And Psalm 95, verse 6, oh, come and let us worship and bow down. The nations do this. Israel does this. Everybody does this. And let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. Basically, brethren, there should be in many of you in heart of unbelief and departing from the living God. And so we see this in Hebrews chapter 3, verse 8 through 11. As we go through this, we'll see also in Numbers chapter 14, verse 22. Number 22 is this reference. And we're going to see in Numbers 14, verse 22. What we see is the same reference that we saw from Hebrews chapter 3, verse 8 through 10. We also see in Numbers chapter 14, verse 22, which is because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, have tempted me now these 10 times and have not hearkened to my voice. Surely they shall not see the land which I swear unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoked me see it. And so they go through and mention that as they go and talk about the land, that this generation that had provoked the Lord multiple times, they're not going to be able to go into the land. So the generation that had provoked the Lord, they're not going in. It'll be the next generation that goes through. So as we see this and we come back to Psalm 95, we see that in verse 9, when your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my work, 40 years long, now in verse 10, was I grieved with this generation, and said, it is a people that do err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. And we see this through verse 9. We see this also in verse 10. And as we go through in verse 10, do err in their heart and do not, in verse 10, and have not known my ways. Verse 11 says, unto whom I swear in my wrath that they should not enter into my rest. And as we see this here, this also talks about how there's that difference, even for the little flock of Israel that's reading and understanding and knowing. Psalm 95, as they go to the kingdom, Psalm 95 is something they're going to know, they're going to understand, they're going to learn and grow from. You can even go back to the parabolic studies that we had just previously done. And through even Matthew chapter 13, verse 37. The differences that are applied there. Matthew chapter 13, verse 37. We go here. And so we see references here that talk about good seed, bad seed, which talk about believing Israel, unbelieving Israel. And there's going to be these events that have already taken place prior to Psalm chapter 95, in which this is why Israel's already rejoicing. But it gives a description, which we've talked about in our parabolic studies, but that give information that help for the little flock of Israel going into their kingdom for Psalm 95. We're seeing Matthew chapter 13, verse 37. It says, he that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom. That's who's going into the kingdom in Psalm 95. But the tares are the children of the wicked one. That's those who don't get in. That's the Pharisees, that's the Sadducees, that's so forth. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world. That's already taken place by Psalm 95. The reapers are the angels. That's already taken place. You can see that also in Joel chapter 3 and Joel chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be at the end of this world, which is already taken place before Psalm 95. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquities, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. There's Psalm 95 again. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. And so you see, even from the parables, they're able to be compared with the Psalms and vice versa. And so we're seeing this in Psalm 95. This is what we're seeing. Unto whom I swear in my wrath. We saw some of that in the parable in Matthew 13, the parable of the sower, wheat and the tares. That they, the bad seed there, should not enter into my rest. Now it talks about not entering into my rest. You know that it has to do with the kingdom. But we see specifically talking about this state of blessing, state of peace, of rest. If we look at Hebrews chapter 4, and we go into verse 1 there. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 1. When it talks about that rest there, and it says, unto whom I swear in my wrath that they should not left us of entering into his rest, any of you should preach. That's the gospel of the kingdom, not the gospel of the grace of God, which we believe today. As well as unto the not being believed, do enter into rest. As he said, as I have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest, in Psalm 95. Although the works were finished from the foundation, and seeing therefore it remaineth that some must enter therein, and they to whom it was first preached entered not in because of unbelief. Again, he limiteth a certain day, saying in David, today, after so long a time, it is said, today, if ye will hear his voice, harden not your hearts, in Psalm 95. For if Jesus had given them rest, then he would not afterward have spoken of another day. There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God, Israel, Jude, going into that kingdom. For he that is entered into his rest, he also hath ceased from his own works as God did from his. So you're seeing, just as God ceased from his work on the seventh day, there's going to be those that cease from the faith plus works covenant standing when they get into that kingdom. They'll be able to cease from that type of rest. So those that make it into the kingdom, that endure into the kingdom, Matthew 24:13, eventually they'll make it in. They'll be able to have that rest. Let us labor therefore to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. And then it goes in talking more. But that's what we're seeing about the ultimate goal there, about them getting into that rest, and how he's talking about how 40 years, verse 10, long was I grieved with this generation, and said, it is a people that do err in their heart and have not known my ways. That's unbelieving Israel. As he talks about this here, and how they're not to harden their heart as they hear what God's instructions are, as they go into the wilderness again, Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, and get ready for everything that they've pretty much already gone through. But by the time they go through the wilderness, they endure the great tribulation, they endure into the end, they make it into the kingdom, they're in the kingdom, they're rejoicing with psalms, and that's Psalm 95. As they go into the presence of the Lord, into the kingdom, that's what we're seeing where they say, let us, that's the little flock of Israel, come before his presence with thanksgiving. So as we see this and we talk about the idea and the concept of this Thanksgiving, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, you want to talk about the concept and the ideas of Thanksgiving. And you talk about how Thanksgiving is something that you're celebrating. You can also talk about how, well, there's going to be a time of Thanksgiving for Israel in their kingdom, where they'll go through the events that they went through based on the times where they had to struggle with their unbelieving counterparts, their unbelieving Israel. They went through the Great Tribulation. They went through enduring through the wilderness. They went through the events of the Antichrist. They went through the events of the Great Tribulation and through all the events of the book of Revelation. They made it through, and now they come before his presence with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. They acknowledge him before all gods. They acknowledge him as the one who has the deep places of the earth, the strength of the hills. The sea is his, and that he's formed everything on the land. They acknowledge him as the creator of everything, which is the acknowledgement of Genesis chapter 1 through 6. For he is our God, verse 7, and they say that we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. So they go through this, they acknowledge everything in Psalm 95, and this is sort of an acknowledgement of thanksgiving, a psalm of thanksgiving. So anything you could use from Psalm chapter 95 to help get you through and help build up another topic, which is why we're going through the topics we're going through. If this can help out with what you're doing in the Thanksgiving day, use Psalm 95 to help bring up topics, to help work things through, that there are events of Thanksgiving, Psalms of Thanksgiving, people who are a part of Thanksgiving. The topics of Thanksgiving are different topics, but Thanksgiving is divided. Talk about the gospel, talk about multiple gospels, talk about multiple people of the Bible in order to get that Thanksgiving ready to go. So we see about this when we talk about before his presence with Thanksgiving, being rightly divided playlist. So with that, we'll kind of wrap up a little bit early. We'll stop here, see if there's any kind of thoughts or comments on anything that we've just gone through, and continue next time with a different study on going through the book of Psalms in this case, or in another study for another topic. So yeah, we kind of wanted to go through those two things and kind of wrap up with these two types of studies, but these are just the beginning. We'll have two more studies ready to go. We'll have two different types of studies. We did have that glitch in the middle of our study, so if the study is a little bit shorter than normal, that's totally fine. That's absolutely normal. We did have a glitch that made things come up a little bit short, but that's totally normal. Absolutely, part of what happens from time to time.
Still got the important
And
information.
we got the important information out there. We're happy to do it. We're looking forward to doing it again. Just normal part of what happens on a normal type of
Sink first world.
Synchronous world.